may be seated. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So I ask the question of the preamble of the Constitution, what does it mean to form a more perfect union? What does more perfect mean? Does it mean more perfect than we were? Does it mean more perfect than the land from which we came? Does it mean more perfect than others in the world? What does it mean to establish a more perfect union? During COVID, two opposite things have been happening in our country. Tensions have risen. Anger has been amplified. And at the same time, many people have lost hope. They've lost hope of change. They've become lethargic, apathetic, disconnected. With all that's going on and our drive every day to just make it under all the pressures of living and family, of friends who continuously push us out of our comfort zone, we feel depleted and at the same time we feel frustrated. And all of this consumes and exhausts us. So, it would seem better on the issues that aren't immediate to turn a blind eye. Put things on hold. Let's wait till this is over. On the other hand, so many are angry. It's hard to restrain their fury, and it spills over out into the streets in violent ways. So I say to you this morning, neither can be true. We can't be apathetic and we can't let our emotions rule the day. And we cannot wait for a more perfect union. We cannot put on hold the work that is required of us as we ready ourselves for the high holidays, of making ourselves more perfect. Not just good enough, but to make ourselves more perfect. Each year, as we enter the month of Elul, I go back to my favorite text that I study every year at this time. It's a text called Mesilat Yesharim. It's written in the 18th century by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, often known as the Ramchal. And the Ramchal warns us, V'hu ma she'amru zichrono livracha. And this is what our ancient ancestors said, Tashet choshech vayihi laila. Quoting from Psalms, Zeh ha'olam hazeh shedome lalayla. Our sages say, quoting from Psalms, you make darkness and it is night. And the rabbis in the Talmud of Baba Metzia say, this refers to the world in which we live right now. We live in darkness. Or as the 12-step program says, we must make a searching and a fearless moral inventory of ourselves because we live in darkness right now. So the Ramchal, in quoting this together, says, you cannot turn a blind eye. You cannot make believe you can't see. Don't make believe that everything's okay, because it's not. Our society is sick, and we are feeling the effects personally. We must, the Ramchal teaches, acknowledge the impact it's having on us and do something about it. Acknowledge the fact that we're living in darkness right now. We must realize who is to blame and who is the victim, and recognize that playing the victim card isn't enough. We must participate in our own redemption, in our own striving towards a better world, a better self. When Moses sets forth in this week's Parsha the laws of treatment of animals, of social norms and aspirations, of rules of commerce and productivity, of family norms and goals, with each refrain Moses says, remember, you were slaves in Egypt. Moses is asserting the claim that the Jewish people can do better than where they came from, each time drawing on the feelings and memory. Moshe implores the Jewish people with whom he has led and who has had such a challenging relationship to do better, to strive to be a more perfect people. He's asking individuals to do better, to be better. Yet the Parsha has one of the most challenging laws in all of its rendering. It is the law that is so hard to enforce that the rabbis try to actually do away with it. The Ben Soreru Moreh, the rebellious child, challenges us because it says that those people can no longer be a part of our society. And it says at the same time, we literally made them. If a man has a child who is defiant, it doesn't listen to his father or to his mother, and does not obey them, even after they have disciplined him, he ought to be put to death. But the Talmud rejects this law by creating so narrow an application of the law that it could never happen. Oh, the creative mind of the rabbis. Ben Soreru Moreh lo hayav and lo atid liyot, says the Talmud. The rebellious child never was and will never exist, says the Talmud in the Tractate of Sanhedrin. Rather than taking responsibility for the people we have literally raised, for the people we have literally created, the Talmud says it never happened. It's never going to be. We were just given that law. It doesn't make any difference. Don't pay attention to it. But they challenge us to answer the question of where does evil come from in our world? When evil people exist in our society, we have to ask ourselves the question, who made them? They weren't born that way, they were raised that way. And then the Talmud and the rabbis and the Zohar and the Hasidic tales remind us we have to take responsibility. Clearly, there will be people in our society who do bad things. Obviously, we will do things that we regret. So our first question has to be, how did we get here? What are the circumstances that surrounded and aided in those behaviors we wish to avoid? The 12 steps, again, of Alcoholics Anonymous has a person committing to taking a continuous personal inventory. And when we discover that we were wrong, we have to promptly admit it. Shnei Luchot HaBrit. It's a wonderful Hasidic commentary. Offers a wonderful comment on the Zohar, in which the Zohar imagines a conversation between Moshe and God. Be'oto sha'ah she'amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe, B'parsha zo, at the exact moment when Moses received the laws about the Ben Soreru Moreh, the rebellious child in this week's Parsha, Amar Moshe Ribono Shel Olam, Moses turns to God and says, Master of the universe, V'chi yesh av she'oseh kazeh livno. Is it possible that a parent will do this to their child? V'hu yada b'chochmato shehu romez le'el Yisrael. And the Zohar says, you know that this is not a reference to a specific child, but to the Jewish people, born of God, who are rebellious in their ways. Ve'shiva kodesh baruch hu. God responded, Doresh, v'kibel sechar. Dig deep, and you will receive the reward. Is it possible, Moses says to God, you're going to actually give me this law in the face of a Jewish people that's stubborn and rebellious? And so Moses begs of God, Uvikesh Moshe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shelo yihye nichtav aleihem parshazo. Don't make me write this one down. Please, God, you know the circumstances. Don't make me enforce this law. And Moses begged God, don't give me these laws. Why? My answer is because it's so hard to do a fearless moral inventory, personal accounting of ourselves, acknowledging the way we have changed, sometimes so subtly and imperceptibly over time that we're not who we recognized we once were. So let me just rephrase the question that Moses asks. V'chi yesh av she'oseh kazeh livno. Is it possible that a parent would do this to their child? It's not a question about punishing that child for doing something wrong. Is it possible that a parent would raise a child in such a way that that child would become so evil? V'chi yesh av she'oseh kazeh livno. Is it possible that a parent would do this to their child, make them morally corrupt? Is it possible that a father would do this to his son? Is it possible that parents raise this kind of child? Is it possible we're creating an environment that produces such extreme acting out? Is it possible that we are, as parents, needing to take more responsibility for our children that we're raising? Is it possible we as citizens are contributing to what Alan Bloom in 1987 called the closing of the American mind, the moral corruption of our nation? Look, so much has been written about how we got to this point as Americans. Such division, such hatred, so morally bankrupt, so ethically challenged. So rather, I refer you to a book by Brutal Bedelheim, who once wrote a book entitled The Good Enough Parent. It's a book that essentially gives parents a pass for the little mistakes. It explains that with all that's going on in their lives, they must understand that it's impossible to be a perfect parent. The strains, the exhaustion, the physical depletion makes a parent not at their best. So Brutal Bedelheim says, don't sacrifice the good for the perfect. And the same could be said for making it during COVID. We're often willing now just to get by. So I hearken back to the preamble of the Constitution and add, more perfect means better than what came before us, but not as good as what's to come. More perfect means better than good enough. Today, we must recommit ourselves in this month of Elul as we creep towards the high holidays to pledge ourselves to be more than good enough, but to be working towards more perfect. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184, Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise.